So, good afternoon everybody. My name's Jason, and I'm making this video just so I can give you my point of view with Fueltech engine management system. I ordered it for my 2000 Dodge Viper GTS, and so far I have been extremely happy with the product. I'm going to sort of give you a base overview of what I purchased to work with my vehicle, and then I'll go over like all the install that I did to work with my car. I've actually already installed it and did a first start, and it got it to idle. It took me a couple days to get it to idle, but it idles great. And so let's go ahead and get started here. So when I ordered it, obviously it's a 10-cylinder engine. It's a 2000, so it was a wasted spark car. So basically, I have already done a conversion on the car to a Gen 4/Gen 5 top end. So I actually wanted to go to the individual coil setup, and luckily the Fueltech FT600 is capable of doing all that. So now I have sequential injection and sequential coil setup, individual coil setup. So basically I ordered the FT600 setup. As you can see in the boxing, comes well packaged, great documentation. I mean, this is the only engine management system I've received where, I mean, literally it's a step-by-step guide, every screen, how to set up everything. The unit itself, even when you plug in your basic engine parameters, it will create a wiring diagram. So it's, I mean, I think that's most people's Achilles heel is wiring. And being that there is no sort of patch harness for this, especially for my vehicle, I had to individually wire everything in. So having that wiring diagram was fantastic, and it made it extremely simple. So much so that, honestly, the very first time I wired everything up, and it has a test functionality to make sure everything's wired correctly. With the key on, everything was actually reading correctly, and I didn't have to, no wiring was miswired. So that's basically a testament to the Fueltech of how well the documentation is laid out, and it's very DIY friendly. Again, great documentation. That's for the FT600 head unit, the actual ECU. Now the ECU and the dash are one component. It also has a built-in map sensor up to, I think, 7.5 bar, which honestly, if my car ever hit that, they'd be peeling parts off of Mars. But so all that's integrated into the head unit itself. The only things I had to purchase outside of the FT600 dash or the ECU, I did get a 10-foot unterminated harness. And then I bought the Spark Pros to run the coils, because I used the stock Gen 4/Gen 5 coils, since I'm using the valve covers that have the placement for the original coils. So I'm using the stock Viper coils off a new Viper, and then I'm using 2 of the Fueltech Spark Pro igniters. Each of them can fire 5 coils. Obviously that's why I needed 10 coils. And I also got the O2 conditioners, which you'll need for closed loop operation. So I've got a left bank and a right bank O2 conditioner, and they connect to the main FT600 via a CAN bus. Again, extremely simple install. The unterminated harness already has the CAN bus wiring on there. You just, if you're familiar with Race Pack, it's a similar setup. You just sort of plug in the devices, and then you have a terminator at the end, and then you just associate them inside the software, and done deal. But that was basically the main components that I purchased. So the FT600 head unit, 2 5-coil drivers, and 2 O2 conditioners. I did get a couple miscellaneous. I got the fuel pressure sensor and the oil pressure sensor. All that together, I think it ran me around $4,500, somewhere in that neighborhood. So not the cheapest, but not the most expensive either. I did research on other ECUs out there. Obviously the biggies like Motec, the AEM Infinity, obviously Holley, but I don't think Holley's capable of running 10 cylinders and 10 coils sequentially. And then there's Mega Squirt. So there's a bunch of different ones out there. And doing my research, I sort of went with Fueltech because obviously you can download the software from any of those manufacturers and you can sort of play around with it and see if it's something you can get a grasp on or not. But the Fueltech seemed to be extremely intuitive, very user-friendly, very DIY based. Like I said, pretty simple questions as you're going through. I mean, in the configuration, it's very simple questions on setting up the engine, gives you the wiring diagram, and sort of gives you a base map to where you can start off from. So all those, and as well with the documentation and the support they have, it seemed like a no-brainer. It seemed pretty easy. As far as cost comparison goes, like I said, this was around $4,500. Now that doesn't include, obviously I bought coils. That's another like $300 from Rock Auto, $300-400 from Rock Auto. And then I did use mil-spec and Deutsch connectors for all my connections. So I did run 4 mil-spec connectors for the bulkhead, for the main harness, and then for my ignition harness. And then 2 6-pin connectors, 1 each for my O2 sensors through the firewall to the exhaust. So obviously those mil-spec connectors and the Deutsch connectors are not cheap. And then I had to buy the tooling as well. So again, about $4,500 on the base system. Your Motec comparably is probably going to be more like in the $6,000 to $8,000 range. And then your Pro EFI, again, you're looking at $2,000 for the ECU, and then all the components to add on to it, as well as the documentation is not as great with the Pro EFI. And then obviously you got Mega Squirt, which is really DIY, but very little documentation, and then the AEM Infinity, which the only people I know of is Nth Moto, which are like bar none the #1 shop, but you're going to pay to get that installed. So anyway, that's a basic rundown of the stuff I purchased. We'll move on to the car now, and I'll show you basically what my install looks like, and then I will do a quick startup. All right, so here's the car in its natural habitat in the garage, hood up on jack stands. Again, it's a 2000 GTS, Dodge Viper GTS. As you can see, I did the Gen 4, Gen 5 top-end conversion. It's got Gen 5 heads, Gen 4 intake that's been ported. Stock bottom end Gen 2 engine, but it does have diamond forged pistons from row racing. Twin 75mm throttle bodies and a ProCharger F1X. So that kind of explains why I'm sort of going to the standalone or piggyback engine management system. I've been using the SCT and using HP tuners. The SCT literally has 0 documentation and 0 support. HP tuners has better support, but I mean, they're limited by the JTEC controller, which honestly, I mean, you have 9 rows of resolution, and for a boosted application, it's just it's not good enough. Again, as you can see, I've taken the coil cover off, but you can see I'm running the Gen 4, Gen 5 coil unplug setup with the Moroso plug wires. But again, I had to make the injector and ignition coil harnesses. I had to make them from scratch. I did use the existing injector wiring up to the plug that's underneath the cowl, but from there up to here is all new harness. Back underneath the cowl, there's actually a 16-pin mil-spec connector which goes to the two ignition igniters that's behind where the passenger airbag used to be. But that's what connects to the coil harness, which you see going up there. Also on the fuel rail, you'll see that's where my fuel pressure sensor is. I use the existing map sensor wiring for that, which worked out perfect. The map sensor is a 3-wire, 5-volt ground and sensor wire, which is exactly what the fuel pressure regulator or fuel pressure sensor uses. So I just repurposed that. And I also repurposed ignition coil wires 1, 2, and 3, and use those for the flex fuel sensor. Also, the FT600 uses, I can do idle by timing instead of using IAC, which worked out great. So the IAC wiring on the other side, I also repurposed the first 3 wires of it for the oil pressure sensor. That's I just teed off where the original oil pressure sensor is. So again, repurposing the wires that's already there, it sort of gives it a, I don't have to rerun any new wiring, and it's sort of factory that way. And so that worked out great. Moving on to the actual JTEC computer. As you can see here, this is the original JTEC PCM, obviously. All I did was just remove the pins that were necessary to go to the new FT600, used Dodge connectors, repinned it, reconnected it, and made this sort of, as you can see, it's a mil-spec 55-pin connector that goes right underneath where the original connector is. So that's sort of a little mini patch harness there. And it goes down to the Dodge connectors that go to the individual wiring. Now, I did separate all the wiring out to sort of make it easier. So all the injector wires are on one plug. The power's on another plug. The cam and crank sensors are on another plug, and so on and so forth. As far as what I'm having the FT600 control now as opposed to what the JTEC was controlling before, basically I have the FT600 controlling everything. The only reason I have the JTEC controller still in the car is for the body control module, basically the interior lights and all that garbage, and the security system. Other than that, it's controlling nothing. So the FT600 is controlling both fans, 1 and 2. It's controlling. It obviously gets all the inputs from all the original sensors, except for the fuel pressure and the oil pressure sensor. Those are the 150 psi senders. So I'm still using the stock coolant temp sensor. I'm still using the stock inlet air temperature sensor. I'm actually reutilized so on the Gen 2s, the speedometer is ran off of a Hall sensor that's actually in the transmission. There's a reluctor wheel on the output shaft on the transmission. So for this particular application, I just repurposed that as the drive shaft sensor, which is, hopefully it's going to work out great. So basically, the FT600, I can use that drive shaft sensor to incorporate traction control into the car, and some time-based stuff. So I can ramp in timing. I can ramp in, I can't really ramp in boost because it's a supercharger, but there's a lot of things I can ramp in. There's a lot of time-based functions inside the FT600. Again, all the grounds are ran. I did have to run separate wiring to the back of the car to the battery, and there's a plug deep hidden down in there for all the grounds run individually back to the battery. The Fueltech, that's how it cuts power to the system, not via the power wire, but via ground. It cuts ground, and that's how it turns off. Also, as you can see, the little, I got this little spare connector. All the extra outputs and inputs for the system, I went ahead and pinned those out and ran them to the plugs. That way, if I ever want to, let's say I want to go turbo or want to add line lock or whatever I want to repurpose those nitrous or whatever, all I have to do is just pin it into the Deutsch connector plug, run the wire into the actual solenoid, and then just assign it in the ECU, and done deal. So, like I said, there's the yellow outputs there. There's 6 of those. I think I have about 4 of the blue outputs left, and then I have many of the inputs left. I think there's up to 20 something inputs, so I have about 20 inputs left that I can just tap into, which I ran like 10 of those to the outside of the car, and then there's actually 6 of those inputs that I ran to a plug on the inside of the car. That way, if I want to add a button to activate whatever, again, I'll have a plug on the inside of the car I can tap into and assign inside the ECU. So there's a lot of scalability and future stuff thought out through there. That basically sums up how I wired the outside of the car. Again, the coil and plugs, I bought the coils from Rock Auto. Yeah, that's the basic gist of the car itself. So we'll move into the inside of the car now. All right, so as you can see, I sort of molded, not the best in the world, but I molded the dash itself and the O2 conditioners on each side. Obviously the left side for the left bank, right side for the right bank. They have digital readouts, and you'll see that here in a minute. And then the actual ECU itself, as you can see, the row lights across the top, your shift lights, which you can designate what RPMs and whatever you want all that to go to. Then you have the 4 additional lights that you can set up as warning lights. I have the top 2 set up as the blinkers. So again, this is really street car friendly as well. So you can have speedometer, odometer, hours, blinkers, you know, it'll run AC, all that type of stuff you want to run. Again, being that this is obviously an older model car, it's a 2000, and the way the Viper's set up, so like obviously it's got its own individual gauges, so I wasn't too concerned about removing the tachometer and the speedometer. The message center still works, all that stuff still lights up, so that's good. Again, the steering wheel's off. I'm waiting to get I'll probably get another steering wheel that has the 2-step activation button on it. But yeah, as you can see, the interior is pretty much stock, looks normal. The passenger side airbag is gone. Like I mentioned earlier, the igniters are actually mounted behind that. The 2 5-coil igniters are mounted behind there. And that's basically it. Everything else is pretty much stock the way that is. Let's give it a little key on, and you'll see here, again, as far as the O2 conditioners, the readouts, when I turn the key on, they'll actually have a designation on them, so you'll see a little R on this side and a little L on this side, letting you know, hey, this is the left conditioner, that's the right conditioner. I thought that was a great little addition there, so at least you know, hey, if I got this wired correctly, that's reading the right bank and that's reading the left bank. You can hear the fuel pump there. You saw the little, you can set up whatever your initial dash display looks like. As you can see, the O2s are heating up. You can also, it's set to come up to my regular dashboard. Obviously, you can have it set to come up to different things if you want. Another great feature, so obviously you got the little data logger there. Then you got your, you can set up the dash however you want. The great feature is it's all touchscreen. So as you can see, I can shift and go to different menus. It's not really coming in all clear on my phone here, but again, it's all touch screen. So if your laptop dies or you don't have your laptop with you, you can tune via the screen itself, which is pretty awesome. I mean, you've got your injection angle. Yeah, you got your injection angle, you got your ignition table, engine settings, all your inputs, all that stuff. Everything you get for the most part with the laptop, you'll have a menu you can go scroll through inside the dashboard there. As far as that goes, that is that. Again, the cold start, I'm still working on getting that all smoothed out. Other than that, no input from the gas. It's a little loud. My neighbors probably hate me, but whatever. So again, obviously the cold start, I got some work to do there. But once it starts to warm up and the O2s really, you can set the speed at which the O2s learn. I've got it set obviously pretty slow right now. But again, that's no input from the gas, and that's me tinkering with it for a day. Basically working from scratch, building a map, a fuel map. So again, sequential everything. It all works, everything works, no errors. Starts up every time. So now, you know, obviously the next step's to get it tuned and start working on the tune. Again, I've been extremely happy with the product so far. Every question I've had, they've immediately answered. The guys at Fueltech, they've immediately answered, have been extremely helpful. But again, it's been really straightforward, easy to plug up, easy to get started with. And again, with the data logger feature and stuff, if you're familiar with HP tuners, it sort of works the same way. So you can log it's all real time too as well. So you can make changes while it's running and it'll take effect. Which another good feature was the overall fuel trim. So that's honestly how I got it to idle in the first place, was once I got it running, I basically pulled fuel until I got the O2s to within 5% of accurate, so of hitting the air fuel mark, which is pretty cool. So you can get the fuel table in line very quickly. And then again, with the data logging, you can overlay your O2 correction onto your base main fuel map and then apply that. So I mean, once I get this thing off jack stands and start driving it around, I should be able to get the fuel map in line fairly quickly. You know, just driving around and keep applying that map until finally it should be good to go. Again, you can download the software and jack around with it and see what you think. But again, I've been extremely happy with the product. So thanks for watching.